It is going to be moderated by our head of product marketing, Patrick. Patrick, would you like to introduce the new panelists? Thank you, Gus and Michael.
Sure. Thanks, Bindu. Yeah, as Bindu said, my name is Patrick Nussbaumer. I'm in marketing here at Abacus. Super excited to be here to talk about AI in the real world with two guests with an enormous amount of experience. So we have BK from American Eagle Outfitters, as well as Chase from Cart.com. But I don't want to steal their grandeur. So BK, would you mind introducing yourself? And then Chase, I'll ask you to do the same.
Thank you, Patrick. First of all, thanks for inviting me for this for this panel. I'm BK Vasan. I have the responsibility of data technology and advanced analytics in AEO. I have a long. Prior to that, I was working for T-Mobile 3 years doing the same thing, and prior to that, I had a long stint with Walmart in the data space. So that's me.
Great.
Happy to be here.
Super excited to have you here. Chase, turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. My name is Chase Zieman, Chief Data Officer and co-founder of Cart.com, the first ever end-to-end e-commerce provider in the world. Previously to founding Cart.com, held a variety of different roles in the data science and AI space, such as head of data science for Alteryx, head of data science for digital transformation for Home Depot, and then also principal data scientist early on in the days over in the electricity world in NRG and Reliant. So happy to be here and talk about some commerce analytics today, given the two panelists. I think you're on mute, Patrick. Or maybe lost it.
Hi, Patrick.
1 second. I'm sorry. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what happened there. I start getting all sorts of warnings that you never want to get when you're moderating a panel. So sorry about that. Thank you, Chase. Appreciate it. So why don't we keep going, Chase, on just at a high level, what are some of your thoughts and how do you plan to leverage AI in the next 12 months or so over at Cart.com?
Yeah, so good question. When we think about building end-to-end e-commerce for brands, and you look at some of the providers out there and the options, right? There's like marketplace routes, there's hub and spoke routes, like the Shopify's of the world. And because no one has really and truly stitched together end-to-end e-commerce, other than some of the mega brands and retailers out there, such as the American Eagles of the world, such as the Home Depots and Wayfairs, et cetera, when you go into that middle to upper middle market, what we consider between $1 and $200 million a year, no one has really unlocked in a profitable manner the ability to have world-class artificial intelligence and data science for brands in that ICP band, in that ideal customer profile band. And so what we are trying to do, as quickly as possible, and my mission is to provide that top right corner of the Gartner Analytics maturity curve, so to say, to all brands of all sizes and scales. And so what does that mean? That means what I would call our ML toolbox of demand forecasting, customer segmentation, attribution, product recommendation engines, predicted customer lifetime value, you name it, right? And so being able to have all of those things easily deployable in a very quick manner, and then actually also being able to activate based upon those algorithms and actually put together prescriptive automation for these brands is really where we're going. So out of all the things that I just listed, we probably have about 30 to 40% of those in production today and generally available. And then also testing a large amount of those capabilities with, closed beta and things like that. But really, in short, it's providing the capabilities and technology that the biggest brands in the world have built for themselves for thousands upon thousands of brands at once.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Sounds super exciting and also super valuable to many organizations out there. BK, how about yourself? What are you guys doing over at American Eagle?
Yeah, I will tell you there are a couple of things. I think some of the things what Chase said is pretty exciting, and we all make an attempt to do several of that. Whatever things he was talking about, like half we all make our own way of implementing it, but definitely it's a good use cases that he's trying to solve. So I will tell you from AE perspective, the biggest challenge for us this year where we want to really move the needle is on the forecasting. And so in retail, what you would see is not all problems are new problems. Some of these problems are existing for decades. But what I see is as every year progresses, that we have tools and technologies available, so you may be able to solve the problem much more better than several years ago, right? So when you talk about forecasting, it may say, yeah, we have done forecasting, and everyone has been doing forecasting for decades now. For us, this is a value generator for us. Think about it, like with all the advent of COVID and all the things that have happened. So we all had different challenges 2 years ago. Like what happened was, it propelled a lot of organizations to go from stores, from brick and mortar to more digital. They've transformed pretty quickly to online shopping and retail experience. That also put a lot of pressure on your DCs and how do you stock inventory at different locations so that you can deliver product faster, right? So that was happening. So when we all had vaccines and we are trying to get out of it, everything, all of a sudden the business opened up. You all saw the demand of earlier part of this year, right? We thought that's going to be a gradual ramp up, but it was not the case. It was like immediately the floodgates are open, everyone wants to buy. But now it's a different story altogether, right? So the first half of this year so we had a lot of promising. So because of that, so we have a lot of inventory right now, right? So we bought a lot of stuff. That's what AEO does, is we do pre-buy a lot of this stuff. So now we have a lot of inventory. So now it's equally important for us to have the right forecast for the store level, at the digital level. So for us, forecasting is going to be a significant dollar saver for us this year. So that's kind of one of our primary focus. In addition to that, there are a few other things that we also do using AI and ML today. If you go to an AEO website, the way the products that are displayed, the next best action, the recommendation. Again, these are all something that we have developed a couple of years ago, but we still want to enhance some of them as we progress the rest of the year.
Okay, excellent, excellent. So we just heard from Michael, and he shared a couple of use cases, both with Michelin and a grocery chain over in Europe, about some successful applications of AI. Could I ask you guys, what are some successes you've had leveraging AI in your organizations that are, real life, where, you've been able to successfully deploy, make business impact, get people involved? Would you mind sharing some of those for folks?
Yeah, I can. Again, if you want, I can go first. So I will share a couple of them. So this is primarily not within AEO, but when I was in Walmart, I did this. Again, I'm talking about 5-6 years ago. Two examples I would give with AI. One is I call it market optimization, and we did the same stuff even in T-Mobile too. What it was determining where to put Walmart stores in a particular city. Like, for example, if you take a particular city, you say, where do you put a Walmart store? It's not about just putting Walmart store. As you know, in Walmart, they have different formats, like it's a super center to a neighborhood market or just a standalone Walmart store. So it was a big problem. This is a big challenging environment, a challenging process in a way. So if you think about prior to having the data and ML algorithm put in, how the people used to do it was very ad hoc, very heuristic, very intuitive driven. That's the decision, right? Although it's a significant CapEx spend, but that's how we do. So one thing I would say, what we did with, by the way, since Chase, you mentioned Alteryx, most of the retail, for whatever reason, most of the companies, what I've seen is they use Alteryx for particularly the real estate division. I don't know, for whatever reason, they always build all these processes there, and they build all these Alteryx related, processes. So what we did there was think about that prior to that, before we started implementing AI and ML algorithm there. Prior to that, what happened was the policy was, or the decision was, hey, I want to open up a store, right? Where do I open? That's how it was, right? Instead, they want to change the positioning and determine, no, I'm not going to say I'm going to open a store. Tell me what format to open where. So I need to increase the market cap by this much dollars. Tell me what is the mix of store, where do I need to put. So in order to make a decision, because Walmart is pretty much there in everywhere, within 20 miles, you all know, 20 miles of radius of this country, that's a Walmart store. So now there's a cannibalization effect. You have to take into all these into consideration. Again, I will just take just a few minutes and I can go on and on this one. But what we did there was, you take a city and then you kind of group it into like a 10-mile radius grid. Then we use this one of the genetic algorithms where it's an very iterative algorithm, right? You start a starting point and then you basically figure out what is the optimal net present value by putting all that, looking into all these different combinations. We were able to do this because we have compute and data. Otherwise, it would be humanly impossible for us to say, think about it, if you take a Seattle market or whatever, you start, there are millions of grids and millions of iterations of cycles you have to go and come back with it. And then you come back with what is you optimize for cost or you optimize for convenience. You can do a lot of these permutations and combinations and make a call on that. So that is one example I would give, but I have another thing also, but I will give Chase a chance to share his example. I'll come back later.
Oh, Chase, we can't hear you.
Apologies. The example that comes to mind was back at Home Depot days. Figure we'll talk more about carts sometime through this, but part of the role and team that I was on was growing the HomeDepot.com business and revenue center. And so part of growing HomeDepot.com was figuring out how to sell complex and configurable products online. So how do I configure a custom blind online? How do I create a custom rug online? How do I potentially design kitchen cabinets online and actually transact through that, get a quote, etc. And so there's all of these different things that are not necessarily just a SKU, right? Or even you start thinking about project-based efforts that Home Depot is trying to build online experiences for. Well, in many cases, a lot of these custom and configurable products had some sort of satisfaction guarantee associated with them, where if the product was built and it was mailed to you and you did not like it or it was incorrect, you weren't satisfied with it, they would remake it at no charge to the customer. And so you started getting these dynamics of, hey, having a satisfaction guarantee online drastically improves the conversion rate of somebody willing to transact online, but yet at the same time, it adds a burden to the P&L from a cost perspective of all of these costly remakes, right? And so what we did was we developed an algorithm that basically would detect if there was going to be a potential issue, problem order detection algorithm on these custom orders from these customers before we would actually send it to the vendor to create it. And there was a lot of different types of data that went into this. It was an ensemble algorithm that was using a few different AI approaches, some of which was clickstream data. Like, did you fly through the configurator? Was it the first time you ever visited the website, right? Have you done your research before on how to measure things, or how do you actually go about configuring this type of product that you're configuring? Did you choose a configuration that may be known to have potential problems and or aesthetic issues? Do we have just in general problems with this specific SKU? There's all kinds of different data points, right, that would go into this. And then we could flag an order, basically put it on hold before it was sent to the vendor / supplier for construction, and we would then contact the customer and then just validate, right? You think about this in a walk, run, sprint mentality, and the first thing that we released was literally picking up the phone and calling the customer and say, hey, we have some AI assets that flagged, something with your order. These are the reasons I wanted to talk to you about it. And there was some mixed feedback on internally, right? Of like, is the customer going to dislike being contacted, right, about their order? And like 99% of the time, the customer was completely blown away that we were potentially catching things that could be wrong with their order. And even in scenarios where the order was correct and we ended up passing it through, we created a genuine customer touch point right there. And I do think, ended up over increasing customer satisfaction in those use cases. And so from a remake perspective, we were able to reduce remake cost by upwards of 40% year over year once this asset was put into production, which was obviously huge for Home Depot and the confidence of being able to grow that business online.
Excellent. I always love hearing about novel ways to use AI that may not be very apparent right on the surface to be able to apply AI in that type of scenario. That sounds really interesting. BK, I wanted to circle back to you and give you a chance to share your second use case before we move on.
I have a couple, but I will. This is an interesting thing, and I will tell you. This is again. I'm talking about 5 years ago. I don't know whether Walmart productionized this one or not. So like strawberries, right? Strawberries. That's the shelf life of strawberries is not that great. Like you pluck it in from that point on. It is 3 weeks to 4 weeks maximum. You should sell it. Otherwise, it gets that's that maximum thing. So one of these products, and as you know, one point of time, Walmart was really spending more time on the freshness, like the produce business. They want to make sure how can you sell the produce fresh to the customers. That was a big focus at that time of the leader at Walmart. It was. So this was one of the things that we tried as a pilot. So what happened through using some IoT technology and AI algorithm. So what it was is, so we partnered with one of the local farm. So you start measuring all the, again, when you put a strawberry, there's a lot of conditions like your soil, temperature, water, all of these different ingredients. You start measuring, getting all the data. Then what happens with the sensor, the moment it's plugged and put it into this particular carton, and then from there going to the DC. So these all have to, what we found out also was, if you maintain a strawberry at a specific temperature, I forgot the exact temperature, what it was, from moment it plugged till it goes to the Walmart stores, if you maintain the same temperature, I think it's 70 or less than that. I don't remember exactly what the temperature is. But then what happens is your shelf life lasts, right? Even if, let us say, for example, you're bringing it in the DC and then cross dock it and put it back into the cold Walmart rack. But if this is staying in 30 minutes with a warm temperature, then then it reduces the cycle of the freshness, like the life of the strawberry. So what they did was we are able to track the temperature, maintain it out. So and then we send it to the store. So you may wonder, okay, what is so big deal about? So I'll tell you what this did, right? When we initially were trying to prove out the technology of the IoT, and when by looking at the with the image recognition, can you find out what is the freshness of the strawberry? That is how it all started, right? You take a picture and it will tell you, okay, what is how long it took for us, what is the shelf life of that particular strawberry would be, whether it's going to be 2 more weeks or 3 more weeks. That's kind of how the algorithm was built, by looking at the image recognition. But we are able to capture all this data behind the scenes to go do that. I'll tell you where the real benefit, we didn't really think about it. Now, once we perfected the algorithm to say, okay, by taking a picture of a particular strawberry, we can tell you what is your shelf life. Hey, this can withstand another 3 weeks, let us say. I'm telling you how that information is very critical. You can save millions of dollars in that particular one piece of information. So I'll tell you how we were able to use it, right? So let's say you bring in a strawberry and then you have an application, you scan it, and then you tell, okay, this particular carton, now you have a shelf life of say another 2 weeks, right? And then you have another carton, you say, you know what, this has got a shelf life of just one week, right? So what happens is from DC, it may be in the East Coast DC somewhere, but then sometimes what happens is people drive that from East Coast to West Coast or middle or center, right? Then you have a 2 or 3 days of a transit time. So now, if you have made a decision at the DC level and say, you know what, this has got only one week of shelf life, there's no point in sending it from East Coast to California or somewhere in West Coast. Instead, you send it to some local stores close by, and then now what happened is, now you basically, when you go to work, send it 2 days to transport, and then your shelf life in the store is only 3 days. Instead, when you send something into the local, then you have 1 week time to sell it, so that you don't have to mark down and sell it at a half price. That one simple thing, imagine with millions of products that we have got, particularly in the produce, it's a huge cost savings, right? Because in produce, the reason why sometimes the produce cost is high is because there's a lot of shrink, right? Because you have to throw it away. But now, that's what I'm saying. It's a simple one algorithm. All you need is a machine learning algorithm it's an image recognition. You have the data point, and then you come back, hey, this is your shelf life. That one simple act we are talking millions of dollars of it. So that was one example, and had a similar thing. We try to do it in T-Mobile, do the same thing, right? When somebody has a broken phone, you go to a T-Mobile store. So they have a 3 different supply chain path, right? Depending on how the product phone is. Like, for example, if the phone is completely damaged, or you have just a crack in the screen, so they have a different supply chain, right? That means something can go to the DC and fix it. Something has to go to the vendor and go to it, right? So there are a lot of mistakes being made when prior to this application. The store associate has to see it, they send it to the vendor, and then they return back saying, you got to fix it. So this simple one app has multiple different use cases, in my opinion. And that's something I don't think we have, that also we piloted when I was there. Mm-hmm. But those are all some simple use cases using behind the scenes, using some machine learning and AI that can save millions of dollars. Significant. These are all the things which you can't even possibly think of 10 years ago that we can even do these kinds of stuff, right? So
right. So let's switch gears and talk a little bit about where you currently are at. So Chase, I'll go back to you. Over at cart.com, when you think about your journey with AI and ML and what you're trying to do, have there been any aspects that have been unexpected, either positive or negative, that have been either harder or more beneficial for you as you've been working to deploy, a number of models already?
Yeah, so as expected, the reason I think no one has really done what we're trying to do is because it's hard, right? And this is not even from an artificial intelligence perspective. I'm just talking about from a back-end integration perspective. And so over the last 19 months, we have been working tirelessly on what I call our proprietary data plane across the back end of cart.com. And it's really, how do these products and verticals of the different pieces of the value chain interplay and interconnect together from a data streaming perspective, from a signaling perspective as well. And so I don't actually know if, and they say that 75% of every AI project is data, right? Or let's say 50% is data, and the other 25% is operations, ML ops. And so we over-indexed, which I think rightfully so, in the foundation first, right? Mm-hmm. And so now, being a data scientist by trade for the better of the last 15 years or so, I love ML just as much as the next person, but it was I had to force myself to kind of hold off, right? We couldn't necessarily invest too early. Now, there were some big bets that we made early on in AI that I knew that we were going to need, and I knew that I wanted to be just as good, if not better, than anyone else in the world for things like attribution, right? So we have an incrementality and AI-based attribution model that even considers social media and view through conversions, TV, radio, offline, and things like that we can bring in and fold into a distinct path to purchase. But really, the devil is in the details when it comes to the foundation, and it comes to that intelligent data warehouse that is able to stitch together commerce all the way from marketing to a visitor having hits, to an order being placed, to those units being fulfilled through fulfillment center, shipped to a customer, and that customer potentially calling customer service. And the ability for us to stand that up for a brand, even with core integrations to some of the major platforms out there like Shopify, and I can stand all of that up within like an hour, not days, not weeks or months. I can literally stand up a world-class data warehouse for you within like 45 minutes, assuming I integrate with platforms that you're on, is something that I think is going to be game changer for us. And now the growth of the analytics and AI products that we have.
Okay. Well, how about you, BK? What things have come up that were unexpected for you in your journey at American Eagle Outfitters?
I would say I wouldn't say unexpected, but I think since I've been in this space for quite some time, I think the biggest thing, as Chase pointed out, it's always about the data. Like it's a garbage in, garbage out, right? If the data is not there, that you can't get a product. So I think for us, we are still in the I would say preliminary stage in the AI journey, particularly, I would say. But I think the one thing I would say that we are in good shape right now is in the data space. Like we have got the data in one place, and we have a good game plan for organizing the data. I think we are positioned right now to start building a lot of AI and ML products in the next years to come. So
yeah, okay. So let me ask the question again, but change the focus to people in the journey. What challenges or areas that were either harder or easier working with people within your organization to leverage AI did you experience?
So I would say there are two things at different levels. I still believe that AI and ML is still misunderstood within the organization, right? And I'll speak in terms of from analytics in general. Like sometimes people say AI and it's how BI was. Some of you might know how BI was in 2009. Everyone say, I want a BI. That's not a requirement, right? So they all think that, that's a cool stuff. They got to jump on it, right? And that's what AI sometimes is the buzzword about, hey, I want to do AI. Okay, you can't do AI. Tell me what problem you are trying to solve and see if AI can solve for you. I think for me, the two things I would say. The first thing is the lack of understanding of what analytics can do for the business. And then I think for that, it will be an advantageous position if some leader, I'm talking about the senior leadership level as well, who has grown in the data ranks a little bit, will help, because you need a translator. I call it analytics translator. You need a translator who can speak business and speak a little bit of data science and tell them, hey, what analytics can do for you, right? Because I'll tell you, there's still, I don't want to name which company and who, but there are still people when you're at a senior leadership level, moment you bring in statistics or something, they said, BK, I don't want to complicate, right? That's not it, right? So that's sometimes, but there are things that you can solve using AI/ML now much more better and efficiently. It's adding to the bottom line than it was 10 years ago, right? And I think from the people perspective, the biggest challenge is understanding what it can do and then getting a buy-in. So but I don't see that's a problem in AU. I will tell that for sure. That's one thing which I've seen, all the three companies I've seen. I have a tremendous, leadership buy-in in terms of with the AI and ML person, which is very rare, and I'm very fortunate with that one. Where they know that what AI and analytics can do for them, and they want to make it more like an insights driven, right? Give me the insights, how we can make some decisions on that. So that is one I've always seen. Then the number two, again, the challenge of since you talk about people, it's always about talent too, right? When you talk about data scientist or a data insights analyst or whatever, it's because the thing is, we expect a lot out of this one single individual. When you talk about data scientists, they got to be good at technical stuff. They got to know good at statistics, algorithm. They got to know business. And more importantly, they got to be a good presenter as well. Speak in simple English, right? All four has to be there. And it's very difficult to get all four in one. And sometimes that is also a challenge of adoption, right? You may have a great data scientist, but if that person is not able to translate his insights into results, into actionable, then people don't understand. And sometimes, they're there's a lot of friction and frustration. I think those are all the two things I would say from people perspective, that having the right talent, training it, and then working through that.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. Now, Chase, given the role you're in and the company you're in, being more high tech, you may have different types of people challenges, either with prospective clients or even internally. What have you come across?
Yeah, so I can kind of break it, and I was taking a couple notes here. I can break this into three main themes that I think I've been trying to continue to push for throughout my career. The first is around partnership. And this alludes a little bit to something that BK was talking to, but talking about what problems we're trying to solve, rather than just needing solutions and implementing the best buzzword of the month, I think goes a long way. And then also like understanding that not everything needs ML. Like there are a lot of use cases out there and reasons why not to use ML. But really something that I challenge my data scientist with, or my engineers, if we're working on creating send time optimization for email as an example, and I've asked my data scientist, so like have you actually like went and lived a day in the life of the person who runs our email campaigns? Like literally go job shadow her for a day, and don't worry about your data scientist job for a day, and like go understand what her life is and understand how what you're building is going to help her life and make her life better and make her perform better in her job. And then also showcase to her that you're trying to help her do her job more efficiently, not necessarily trying to automate her job. So number one is just around partnership and understanding. Number two is around what I call embracing human in the loop. And so there's AI and there's human in the loop, right? And so especially for teams and programs that are trying to launch data science programs within companies, I think that they try too hard just to go for full-blown automation, right? And when you go for full-blown automation, you have to have trust. And the only way you get trust is with, repetition and performance. And so I think that you can get a faster runway in many cases. Like, let's be real, there's a lot of AI algorithms, even ones that are not spectacular in terms of different model evaluation KPIs, that if I can just get the tails, and I can tell you, like, I'm 98% confident that these 10% are no's and these 10% are yeses, right? And I've just eliminated 20% of your job, and you can spend time on the gray area, and we're embracing the human in the loop, and then we're working with the stakeholders to actually get that feedback, but yet they're actually beginning to understand how the model works, right? And they're like, yes, these are yeses and these are no's, and like, tell me why this one, which was in the middle pack, was a yes or a no, and creating that feedback loop, which once again goes back to creating that partnership and then also creating that trust, right? And so when the stakeholder feels like they are actually involved in what you're building and what you're deploying, it goes a long way from a trust perspective. And then the last thing that I'll bring up is just around prioritization, right? So a lot of times people prioritize things on an effort impact matrix, right? And effort and impact is great, but for an early program, or really just anything that is, can be seen as just like sunk cost R&D in many cases, I like to bring up two other factors, one of which is alignment with the strategic direction of the organization. So effort, impact, alignment with the strategic direction. And then most importantly, how clear am I able to measure the impact? So, when you're fighting for resources in a company, right? Company doesn't have endless resources. They're making decisions on where that they need to make investments. And you have, model one versus model two, and which one do I want to build and deploy? And model one has a very clear definition of impact. And model two, while I think could be more valuable, is very ambiguous of how we could measure the impact it had on the business. I can tell you which one finance is going to like better at the end of the year, because one of them is going to be very hand wavy and the other one is going to be, I added this tangible impact to the bottom line of the company. And especially early on, as you're trying to grow an organization, grow a department, grow partnership, having those very hard, tangible wins goes a long way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Especially, when you talk about the automation piece, I've seen a lot where when the focus is too much on automation, people are worried about losing their jobs to AI. But when you think about that Home Depot's case study you mentioned, where you call the customer and AI actually helped them learn something. And if you take that approach with your employees, they're going to be leveraging AI and reframe it from automation to helping them learn, about whatever scenario they're in and how they can apply their knowledge to that scenario. It changes it from being worried about using your job to being something that can help you perform better in your job. So love that. So one area that I'm curious around is, I have the luxury of hearing from a lot of companies in the marketplace today, and they're all at various levels of maturity. But quite often we come across companies who say, we either our data's not ready, so we're not even embarking on an AI journey, or they say, we don't really know what to do, but we know we have a lot of data, and they're just kind of stuck there. And if you came across someone like that, what advice would you give them? How to get started with AI in your organization? Where to even begin?
I can go first.
Okay.
I think I can reiterate a couple of the things that I just mentioned in the last answer, right? I think understanding that this is a journey, right? And for better or worse, it's a journey that never ends. And so, it's a maturity curve, and understanding not necessarily everything needs AI, and understanding that you need a foundation, and you need, just because you have a lot of data. I worked briefly at a company in my career that, candidly was a little bit of a bait and switch. And I was told that there was a ton of data. It was all over the place, all over the world. And they were ready for AI. And I walked in and I'm like, you have a lot of data, but it's literally in servers that don't talk to each other all around the world, right? Like there is a 2-year undertaking of centralizing and mapping data before we even need to start thinking about artificial intelligence. And I think it's, having that candid opinion and take on, like, when are you ready for it, right? And doesn't mean that there can't be use cases that are valuable today, but in my mind, like, if you don't have, you think about the Gartner Analytics maturity curve, you have data foundation, descriptive analytics, diagnostic analytics, predictive analytics, and then prescriptive automation. If you don't have diagnostic analytics, which is really just looking in the rearview mirror and are able to tell me why you're performing well, or why you're performing well or why you're performing poorly, like, why are we talking about AI, right? Yeah. And so I think so many times people want to jump the steps, and let's be real, any good construction of artificial intelligence is going to need to start with an understanding of the data foundation. So my biggest recommendation would just be, don't skip the steps and go along the journey. And it's okay to be at different steps of the analytics maturity journey for different parts of your businesses at different points in time. That's perfectly fine.
Yeah, no, that's good. BK, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I would answer in a couple of different ways. So let us say if there's a senior leader asking and say, hey, I'm not ready for AI and all of them. So I will ask 2 questions, right? First of all, what's the data literacy in that organization? Is knowledge of data, right? I will tell you that's one. And then the question I will ask is, how are people making decisions? Meaning, are people making decisions with full data or partial data, right? Because I will tell you one thing, because most of the time the leaders today, we make decisions with partial data, because that's how the leadership here. You don't have all the data, you got to run the business, you make decisions and move on, right? So the question is, okay, that is how you run your business today, right? Let's keep that as one side of it, right? then look at the scenario, the situation where we are in, and the type of people joining the workforce now. So I'll take an example. 5-6 years ago, the debate was, do I need to go cloud or not? Right? That was a big thing. A lot of companies were hesitant to go to the cloud and say, I'm not going. I will just put, because I'm worried about security, I'm worried about this and that. And there are still companies bet on it. You know what? I'm going to go cloud. 5 years fast forward now, nobody talks about that anymore. It's cloud is the way to go do that, right? I see AI will be like that in next 5 years. I'll tell you why I think it is. If the companies who are still debating about I'm not ready, I'm not there yet, I don't see a need, this is what will happen. So think about this, right? I'm using the generational thing here, right? So for us, let's the current generation, the people who are all like us, who are all there, like we are, I call it spreadsheet generation, right? We see rows and columns, our data structures, that our philosophies is different. So now the smartphone generations are getting into the workforce, right? They had I got smartphone and after getting into workforce, right? Now people, so tell how their mind is wired, right? They don't have patience to dig in and find out what it is. They got to be told what they need to be doing. That's going to be the fundamental workforce difference in the next 5 to 10 years. You take a store associate in Walmart store or any other store for that matter. You tell them what to do, they go stop. It's not an attractive job anymore. If you go to a store, let's say you're hiring a millennial to be a store manager in a store. Today's store manager goes, finds out, hey, the certain things is not there, he adjusts on all of them, although we give them what they ought to be doing. So where the things will go is we got to curate the insights for the people, and then they go act on it, right? Hey, these are all the 10 things you do, then they go dig in. So today, if you think about what happens, we give them reports. Senior leaders, what they do, they look at 10 reports, they look at correlate, hey, I'm going to make decisions on. So as you move in the next 5-10 years, they don't have time. You tell me what 10 things, and then they will use their mind where they need to focus on. I think what's happening is that if somebody says I'm not ready there, I think that's going to be the reality that they need to embrace in the next 5-10 years. If they are not going to be ready for that, they're not going to attract those kind of people. I can tell that you can hire these people and give them 20 spreadsheets. Hey, now you go look at all these 20 spreadsheets, come back and tell me what ought to be doing. They'll be quitting your job in 2 weeks and say, I'm not doing it. Right? I'm just giving that as an example. But my point is, I think I think right now how the cloud was 5 years ago, I think now AI is in that space in the next 5-6 years, everything. And I have some few examples later on I will share also. And AI is not only about the real use cases, even the way when technology space, how we are using certain things. And I think we have to depend on these kinds of tools as we move forward, because you are dealing with a lot of data. The decision making is going to be pretty challenging. I think you have to. That's the reality, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree with that. With both of what you said, and Chase as well. So the last question I have, we have about 5 minutes left or so. Michael started to touch on it when he spoke about the pandemic, but it's well known that the pandemic brought about many different things, but 2 areas related to data science were a change in the amount of data. Everyone went online and the amount of data just exploded. It was already growing very quickly, but it just went through the roof when everyone shifted online. And then the second aspect was around the fact that a lot of companies had models in production already and suddenly realized these models aren't working anymore because everything's changed. I need to, retrain them or build new models or, figure out what to do. So for the more mature organizations, there's this quest to just move faster, both in development and deployment. And, given both of your expertise in the data science space, where are areas where companies can, how can they move faster in these 2 types of areas?
I would say that I will go first. I think I have seen the slower part and now the new part, right? So I think right now, in my opinion, there are a lot of tools and techniques available to productionize models faster. Like now, again, we don't have to build it. Like we can always, buy the product available out and then use it to go do it. I think 5 years ago, it's big challenge, right? We don't know how our models are doing, productionizing, putting it out there. We used to mess with Hadoop at that time, and there's capacity constraints, all that. I think now I feel from technologically, I think we are solving the problem, because the reason why it's not like internally I'm trying to solve within AEO, but I will always use a vendor partners who has already solved this and then leverage it for me. That's kind of how I would say productionizing models and monitor for drifts and things like this. More ML ops is there are tools already out there right now I can leverage at this point of time. So
What about from the development or experimentation perspective, though?
and even for that too, right? So I think that for that, I would say the biggest foundation is the data sets and cataloging of data sets. I think if we do that one right, I think that you can enhance the development of models easily. So today, most of the challenge comes with that, because if the data is all around the board, you don't know what data you have. And then the data qualities, everyone complains about data qualities because lack of understanding of data. And I think for me, that was, again, the understanding of data is one. That is one which will help. But with the advent of, if all your stuff is all in cloud, whichever cloud provider you use, that the tools that they provide, I think it really facilitates. At the end of the day, that the workbench or whatever they have got, I think I think it's not, the development is not that how it used to be 4 years ago, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very interesting to me. I'm also very interested in how you can leverage AI and model development to help with data quality and what you can learn from your data, even when it's messy or different dimensions or things of that nature, as kind of a next phase that we're heading into. Chase, how about yourself?
Yeah, so if I'm remembering the question correctly, just to kind of restate it, is how can companies interested in moving faster with embedding AI into everyday kind of move faster, right? Is that the fair question?
Yeah, how do you get more models in the production, but also keep them in there when life events are changing quickly?
Yeah, so well, then you added another keyword there that's a very important keyword, which is models in production. There's so many tools, Abacus being one of them, that are allowing it to be easier, right, to deploy models in production, to monitor models in production, and really kind of eliminating a core skill that would have generally been absolutely necessary for a full-blown machine learning engineer, right? And so I that's not going to stop, right? And so I kind of envision over the next 5 to 10 years that we are kind of doing we as a collective global practice are somewhat doing for AI what the iPhone did for photography, right? And so now anyone with an iPhone or any state-of-the-art phone these days can take amazing pictures, right? And it didn't necessarily put photographers out of business. You still go hire a real photographer if your daughter's getting married, or you're getting married or something like that, or some event. Made their skill set more powerful. But it also is creating the ability to be at Ultra, it's what we called citizen data scientists, right? And it was our charge to make, we believe that anyone could be a data scientist if you made it easy enough to understand, am I trying to classify something? Am I not? Am I trying to predict something? What am I trying to do? Am I trying to find data anomalies, right, in my clean and or dirty data? And it's just continuing to understand the applications in your business where ML can help, and then also understanding that not all models have to make it into production. You could run a segmentation model on your data, figure out the insight that was necessary in the problem in your business, go fix the problem, and the model doesn't ever have to make it to production. And and by the way, you can do that in probably half the time as you could, with taking something all the way to production. And the more that you get those wins, those quick wins internally in your business, and the more that you just make using machine learning just another part of your day, and it's not this 6-month endeavor to build this thing that is going to do this other thing, and then we're going to need to evaluate it. It is going to go a long way. And so at the end of the day, I think it's just around the normalcy of including it in your day-to-day conversations even.
Yeah, no, excellent points. Thank you both. So we're out of time, but BK and Chase, really appreciate your time, your wisdom, your insights, your stories. Hopefully that's been helpful for everyone on the webinar.